Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Military Mind, bringing you news from the front lines. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Russian forces attacked Ukraine overnight on May 26, using 2 ballistic missiles and more than 100 strike drones. Ukrainian military officials reported drone and missile impacts at 11 locations across the country. One of the main targets was Odessa and the surrounding region, where Russian missiles and drones struck civilian infrastructure. One local resident later died from injuries sustained in the attack, while 3 others were wounded. Authorities said the strike damaged the facade and windows of a facility meant for infrastructure, as well as nearby buildings. In the Poltava region, residential areas and infrastructure facilities were also damaged during overnight strikes. One woman was wounded. Farther north, Russian forces shelled settlements in the border areas of the Sumy region nearly 70 times over the past 24 hours. 9 people were wounded, while homes, vehicles, and civilian infrastructure were damaged. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones reportedly reached Kaliningrad for the first time since the start of the war. A drone alert was declared across the entire Russian exclave, and all flights in the region were temporarily suspended to avoid possible collisions with UAVs. Several days earlier, Ukrainian military officer Maxim Zorin described Kaliningrad as, quote, a Russian platform for destabilizing Europe, adding that something clearly needs to be done about it as soon as possible. On the front line, Ukrainian forces are increasing pressure on Russian positions in the Zaporizhzhia direction near Stepnohersk and Primorsk. According to military analysts, Ukrainian troops are using local manpower near Stepnohersk on the banks of the Dnipro River, while attempting to push towards the outskirts of the settlement and attack Russian positions around neighboring Primorsk south of Zaporizhzhia. Ukrainian forces are also maintaining defensive positions south of Mala Tokmachka, located southeast of Oreshiv. Most of the settlement itself is either controlled by Ukrainian forces or remains contested as a, quote, gray zone. Now, in the Middle East, United States Central Command announced that American forces carried out what it described as defensive strikes in southern Iran on May 25th. According to CENTCOM spokesperson Tim Hawkins, the strikes targeted boats allegedly attempting to deploy naval mines as well as missile launch sites in order to, quote, protect against threats from Iranian forces. Reuters, citing Iranian media, reported that explosions were heard in the city of Bandar Abbas in the banks of Strait of Hormuz. A ceasefire between the United States and Iran has officially been in place since April 7th, but the 2 sides are currently working on a memorandum of understanding that would extend the ceasefire by another 60 days while negotiations on a broader peace agreement continue. Ukraine's Air Force continues to carry out active and highly precise strikes against military targets in Russia's immediate rear on Russian territory. Tactical aircraft successfully struck the border village of Tyotkino in Russia's Kursk region. The mission was carried out by the crew of a modernized Ukrainian MiG-29MU1 fighter jets. French AASM-250 Hammer precision-guided bombs were used against the fortified target. Now, these munitions are equipped with a rocket booster and guidance system, allowing them to be released beyond the range of enemy short-range air defense systems. The bombs followed their program trajectory and struck buildings at a former sugar factory in Tyotkino, which the Russian military had converted into a stronghold. Fighting in the Liman operational sector has long since entered a phase of fierce confrontation between technology and engineering tactics. In an attempt to evade total Ukrainian aerial surveillance, Russian occupation forces have changed their deployment tactics. They're abandoning traditional positions and attempting to build up assault groups covertly. However, the pilots of the Signum Battalion of the 93rd Mechanized Brigade are successfully thwarting these plans, turning every enemy hideout they discover into a mass grave. Amid fierce street fighting in Menohrad, UAV units of the 79th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade launched a large-scale operation to destroy Russia's forward bases. Russian assault units are attempting to infiltrate the city and establish positions in basements or abandoned industrial buildings. However, Ukrainian paratroopers have found a way to counter this tactic by deploying heavy 6-rotor bomber drones. The Ukrainian Armed Forces carried out a large-scale coordinated operation using the latest FP2 long-range kamikaze UAVs. The combined attack targeted key enemy military facilities ranging from fortified naval bases on Russian territory to strategic logistics hubs and command centers in the occupied territories of Ukraine. The operation's greatest triumph was the successful destruction of the Russian Black Sea Fleet Core Combat Forces, which had been hidden at bases in Krasnodar Krai. Despite dense barbed wire barriers and the operation of coastal air defense systems, the FP2 kamikaze drones were able to breach the perimeter and deliver precision strikes against frontline ships. And with that footage, we conclude this edition of Military Mind. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.